And let's actually go with the third and final subject, and I'm gonna leave it to Eirik to actually take it away.
Well, my topic is a topic that somewhat got into my part of Trackmania in 2020. I didn't really plan on it. Masa asked me if I wanted to be a shot caller in Trackmania Grand League. I said, sure, I can probably help you out. Then he needed someone to cast it. I said, sure, I can probably help you out. But then I realized I cannot even capture the game. I cannot stream, so I had to ask my friend Scottie to step up. And then we got into casting, but I then figured out that I like doing it, and I think we are actually one of the first duo that have a different roles when it comes to casting. Scottie being the play-by-play commentator that you normally have in a Trackmania cast, and me bringing up some stats and facts. And that is something I think the casting scene in Trackmania should try to implement, instead of just having, mainly of course, if you just are alone, then you will do everything alone. But if you are going to add someone else into the cast, bring something to the table instead of just being the same sort of guy, just doing each other round. Like, okay, I take round 1, you take round 2. Oh, now it's your round. Oh, now it's my round. So you have actually some different dynamics. You have some different stuff you bring to the table. I think the best example to date is that Scottie and Kappa did alongside with myself. That Kappa being the expert, he has a unique mentality once it comes to the game, because he is one of the best players and arguably the best player in Trackmania. And then once you have Scottie being a play-by-play and mostly have to focus about what is going on in the round, you don't get that good overview that someone that just sits back and look at the round has. So that is something I think should be implemented. That is something I want to promote more and more, so Trackmania gets a better cast experience in the end. But you are two of the casters probably going to be nominated for a caster of the year. Scottie is nominated every year, so some sort of, he has a spot there every year somehow, and Geek stepping out this year to be probably a breakthrough caster. What are you guys' roles? You are eventually casting it. Do Trackmania need different casting roles, or are we actually, can we just have one guy being everything?
You want to start it out, Scottie, or can I actually start out?
Oh, you sound more than eager to get started on that. On you go.
Okay, so yeah, I do agree with what you said, Eirik, with the fact that having two different people having separate roles is definitely something that benefits the casting experience overall. And that's a feeling that's also shared with people in the chat. Insanity, for instance, telling that he likes more the cast, likes the play-by-play and Alan's combination, which feels more natural, which is more akin to other esport titles and regular sports, even to for instance motorsport, which is one of my biggest inspirations for casting. For instance, there's someone play-by-playing, and there's still an analyst that is able to actually break down, for instance, the technical aspect of the for instance of tire degradation, for instance, or the mentality of the driver when he has to plan of an overtake. That's something that's kind of lacking in Trackmania. Trackmania has always been the odd man out when it comes to casting, with most of the time casting being done by only one person, and that one person is pretty much doing everything on its own. He's providing the play-by-play, he's providing the analysis, he's doing the production aspect, he's controlling the technical side. He has many different caps to wear, and yeah, in terms of actual depth, yeah, I do agree with the fact that an analyst is well and truly needed. You, Scottie, and Kappa are pretty much probably my favorite combination of casters, with yeah, Scottie ensuring the play-by-play coverage, Kappa with the really great insights into the player's mind in terms of how a player can potentially bounce back from a scary situation, or maybe a breakdown of maps, and you, Eirik, coming in with some being the statistics man, in so to speak, coming up with a few statistics for players when they're entering a certain map or a certain match. So yeah, I feel like, yeah, at least play-by-play plus analyst would be the traditional way to go, and something that is somewhat missing in Trackmania, but that is a work in progress in various languages. Necrua popping by and saying that it's actually a work in progress for French casters, and yeah, Insanity also telling that players can also help, and yeah, that is the main thing. We need to rely more, we need to potentially have more players step up to the plate to actually get into an analyst so that we can help out. We need to be more. Of course, that's a bit of a personal thing. I'm kind of shy when it comes to asking for help. So I try to be as knowledgeable as I can to actually avoid saying too much bullshit on the cast when I have to talk about a certain style. The main example for that being the Full Speed League Glitch Edition, where I was heavily heavily briefed on the rudiments of full speed and which part on each key part of the map by both Navi and Ted from the staff, and yeah, that really helped tremendously. And for play-by-play analysis, the best example I can say was TMM with where I casted with Axel Alex, and Alex was actually providing a little bit of insight, a ton of insight actually during the match, as we lost Eirik again. Episode 1, boys. Episode 1. We're coining it now. I'm really sorry about this. Eirik should be coming back any second now. There we go. So yeah, as I said, the duo with Axel Alex was probably a good example also of play-by-play and analysts working together to provide a bit more depth into the cast itself. But your example of yourself, Scottie, and Kappa is probably the best out of the bunch.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say when I, of course, was the one who was actually casting.
We are the best.
Yeah, but I mean, I would agree with you in the sense where it's at the very least been the most structured cast that there's been that I've observed in Trackmania. But one of the main problems which has resulted in this issue that I would say is just simply the lack of people who are interested in stepping up, so to speak, to actually be casters. The lack of people who are interested in coming in and being an expert, or being a play-by-play commentator, or being the person who'll sit in the back and do the work on the stats, like Eirik had done, and like Kappa was the expert for the Zero Hero stream we done. Because I mean, in my case, I am a very well-seasoned player at this point, as well as a well-practiced caster. I can do the research myself, so I'm happy to fill in any of these sort of roles. But there's not as many other people out there who are going to be play-by-play in the case where I would then do stats, or where I would be the expert to someone else doing play-by-play. Of course, the other disadvantage I have being the expert for someone else's tech cast is normally I'm playing or attempting to play in the tournament itself as well. I'm putting the attempting asterisk there for Zero Hero, of course. But I mean, the problem is with that is just the lack of people who are just simply involved in the casting scene. You, at least recently, in terms of English casting, there'll probably be a name I'll forget, but I mean, the three main names that stick out to me in English casting would be my lovely co-partner and the stream today, Geek, of course, my beautiful Turbo in chat. Eirik, of course, steps in for some events here and there, but as he said, more of a stats person, and then myself coming into that as well. So that's 4 people trying to cover essentially when there's 3 roles that you can fill in a Trackmania stream. Trying to have 4 people covering 3 roles, and considering most times in most tournaments you're having 8 matches on at the same time, you're having 2 matches on at the same time. There's just not enough people to do it, and people naturally, at the very least at the moment, prefer doing it more individually. I mean, a lot of people in some cases prefer solo cast because it has more control over their own dynamic. I mean, I've certainly been in that case, although I enjoy dual casting as much. Again, it's, I suppose, different strokes for different folks, as they say over here. But also, one other part I would like to bring up about Trackmania and casting, which kind of causes a problem with how you would typically structure things in another esports environment. So I'll give you the parallel of Counter-Strike, for example. So if I'm the play-by-play caster for Counter-Strike, I can cast during the round, I can tell you what's happening, and there'll be little downtimes in the rounds, you know, where the players are setting up, where you can have the expert, you know, chip in with some parts and things like that. And then once the round's finished, you have, like, say 30 seconds of a break between the next round, and then you have time to bring stats in, you've got time to bring analysts in, you've got time for the play-by-play to highlight some things they wanted to talk about. In Trackmania, you have a 50-second blitzkrieg, and then, or, you know, however long the round actually is, going a billion miles an hour.
And only a 10-second pause.
Yeah, you have a 10-second pause, you have the round finish timer, which is normally about 5 seconds, and then you have 3 more seconds for the start, and then there you go, you're straight back in for another round. You've got 5 minutes, or in some cases the maps are longer, 10 minutes before you'll actually get to breathe. You'll actually get to analyse what's happened. I mean, we had times with Eirik. I wanted to bring Eirik in much more to the cast in Zero to Hero, but there was times where he was going 10 minutes without talking, and there was nothing we could do about that. You know, there's no time to get him in while I'm trying to shoehorn Kappa's information in, because like you're just having to talk over the rounds at some point, and that's something that I would maybe be interested in seeing something like, say, more spectator tools that we're bringing up earlier, or just simply a competitive mode, you know? Because from a caster's point of view, you don't have the time to digest what's happening. You don't have the time to talk about what's happening, you know? And then following on from that, I mean, even players, they don't have the chance to digest what's happened in the round. You know, they don't get the chance to refocus and get back into their game. Hence the pause system that was implemented back in Trackmania Pro League. So, I mean, there's a lot that can be done about this. In terms of what I was talking about with the casting side of things, a lot more people could get involved. Nadeo could do a lot more. So there's a question of just simply what will actually get done to deal with some of these issues we're seeing.
Yeah, but just to bring up how eventually Kappa stepped in to cast with us, he was posting on Twitter that he cannot play because of his wrist injury. Then I commented for fun, like, it's time to step in as a caster because I would love to hear him cast. And then he hit me up and like, yeah, I'm actually down to cast. So sometimes, Geek, you brought it up that maybe you're afraid of asking people to step in or maybe to cast. Don't be shy, just shoot your shot. Ask people, ask some players that, hey, are you able to help me out? Even though you don't want to specifically ask someone, you can post up a tweet saying, hey, I'm casting this event. Is there any players that maybe want to test themselves as a caster? Myself, I would never have gotten into casting if I had to do everything alone. I need to have a caster with me to actually stream the game, to actually do the play-by-play. If I have to cast something alone, well, it's not going to be a good cast. So that's what I think the main issue is, that maybe some people are too afraid to ask. And once you do like solo cast, in the end of a tournament, you have too many casters, and then it comes down to, okay, so who do we give the cast to? Don't bother. Let's just give 2 play-by-play guys the same grand final, so it's 2 of the same role. So hopefully tournament organizers will look into this, maybe ask some players specifically that maybe they have in their back of their mind, because there are always going to be some great players that doesn't play the event, and hopefully they have time. So don't be afraid to ask people to step in and shoot your shot.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm gonna have to work on, and that's actually something specific. That's actually something that you brought up, the fact that you're having to have a caster with you to be able to stream the game, and I feel like that's the main reason. That's the main thing that put me on the map. Actually, we did OGL Step 3 casting together, Eirik, and I feel like that's really the first. That was our first casting experience together, and that was really the first time that was actually. Feeling alive with casting, because the previous 2 rounds, first of all, they were in French, so nobody would have understood a thing in the audience, and number 2, I had no viewership because nobody knew me, since I even though I casted beforehand in 2019, it was Canyon stuff. So yeah, nobody knew me at the stadium at the time, and having you on board to actually have a little bit of talk during the, for instance, during the laps, which is more akin to motorsports, where a play-by-play and analyst duo could actually work. Is definitely something of a break. Now, I wanted to actually focus on something that has been said by one of my fellow French colleagues, Necrua, saying that we as casters have a big problem with Nadeo only focusing on big streamers for events and not on casters that do have a casting pedigree. And we were discussing that plenty of times offline in between ourselves, and I felt like we could actually have 2 options for this. I wonder what your guys' views are on that. I'm just exposing that. 1, they want to keep the influencers, fine, but we're bringing in an expert in the game that knows the game like the back of his hand to actually brief them on how the system works, on how certain style work, on how the transition to every key part of the track, in order for them not to be complete ignorance in the game when they actually step up to the casting desk, to avoid a repeat of the cast that we saw, for instance, in French at the grand finals of the final phases of the Grand League with Sardosh and Etoile. I have nothing against those guys, though. It's just that the casting could have done with a bit better preparation, IMO. And if that's the second option, which would be better, is fine. They want to keep an influencer in for the promotion aspect, hosting, and general hyping of the crowd, stuff like that. Fine. And if he wants to cast, fine. But if we can actually bring someone who's actually a known caster or analyst to the game to actually help the handle play-by-play from time to time and bring analyst bits when needed, that would really elevate the casting quality dramatically on stage. I feel like that's something that's a path that Nadeo should be looking into if they want to do that for bigger competitions, and same goes for big competition organizers. I wonder what your guys' views are on that.
Well, it's been something I've been kind of arguing for and pushing for years now. And in terms of a lot of Trackmania competitions, I mean, I've experienced this a great amount of times for offline and online events where not only myself, but I've witnessed other people who have been greatly deserving of great casting work, namely people like yourself, Geek, people like Turbo. I mean, I've been in the situation myself, people who are putting in supreme amounts of effort into casting in Trackmania, but they are pushed to the side for someone who brings in a higher viewer count. However, they may bring in a higher viewer count, but they may not be able to provide as high a quality of a cast, or at least a broadcast if we're talking about entertainment side of things as well. So I certainly believe that it's an injustice which a lot of small casters have had to suffer with. I mean, it's exactly Turbo's brought up there. One of the people who's getting some of the most plaudits now for casting so much and being such an entertaining caster in Turbo had 6 viewers in Trackmania Grand League. And you wouldn't even consider that when you're seeing him bringing in hundreds of viewers for Game War Duo Cup, or hundreds of viewers for the Full Speed League Glitch Edition. It just doesn't translate, and it's because so many people are being drafted into Trackmania because of the numbers they bring in. Like, for example, when we look back at the beta season for Trackmania Grand League, instead of bringing in, shall we say, different casters from, like, say for the German side of things, contacting the old Predator crew or the Stubby TV crew or something like that, and getting, people who know what they're talking about, people who've been experienced in bringing big events in German, they instead wanted to throw money at Trackmania, a multi-style streamer who hasn't played Trackmania in years. And the same side of things, they contacted me personally, asking me for people who would be fitting to do a stream in English, who had massive amounts of followers. And I was communicating with them about this, asking, saying, what are you looking for? Like, what kind of people are you looking for? And I was looking up people like, say, for example, Jimmy Broadbent, as he brings in hundreds and hundreds of viewers, and he at least has some sort of connection to racing. And they're telling me, oh, he doesn't need to have any connection to racing. And I'm like, what do you actually want?
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Do you want people to be bringing Trackmania to you who actually know what to tell people? They know how to explain what's happening. They know what to even talk about. I mean, it's like, it would be like me just getting dropped into like some sort of Trackmania discipline like RPG. Like, I don't understand the tricks of that. I would be dropped into that. I would be able to draw upon my kind of casting experience to kind of at least bring an experience to that, but I'd still not really know what I'm talking about. So it's going to be lacking quite a big part there. So I think that big tournament organizers, so we're talking team tournaments, your big events, or even smaller events, need to look more to quality, because that's what's going to get you people coming back to your event and continuing to watch it. For example, if we're talking about just not that I'm calling them out for being a bad example of this, but if we talk about the Full Speed Glitch Edition, if you're watching the Full Speed Glitch Edition and you've had a fantastic time because you're being casted by people who know what they're talking about, who there's been successfully hyping you up about the event, you're going to want to come back to that. You're going to be keeping your eye out. What's the next Full Speed League event going to be? You know.
Exactly.
However, if you're just going to be seeing a big event coming out that's getting casted by someone that might have the hype, you know, they might have the memes, they might be, I don't know, shouting a lot, trying to bring the energy level up, or however the method of doing it is, you might get the kind of the euphoria from being there in the moment, but you're not going to be looking back to that for the event. You're going to be looking back to that for the person who's casting it. So it's a very important thing that needs to be differentiated between that these organizers need to look at. Do they want people coming back to their events, or do they want people coming back to these casters, which a lot of people don't look at? They just look, you know, Virtual has 300 viewers on his stream, so we'll get 300 people watching our channel, instead of Turbo, who gets 10 people when he casted this, so oh wait, we'll just get Virtual instead. Not speaking anything to the quality of either of those two, of course. I mean, I'm not going to put my foot in my mouth there, but like, that's not how you should be making these decisions. You should be making these decisions upon who are the best casters, not who are the most popular.
Exactly, and yeah, that's something that that's something that I've been the idea in my mind, and that's an idea that I had in my mind, that of actually professionalizing in quote unquote, to actually professionalize the casting scene a bit. That is to say, create a pool of casters that we know are of high quality, which they could actually back up with casts they have done in the past. For instance, me, I could say, hey, if you want a caster, I am here. I can do in both French and English. I have casted this and this and this and this. You can link a few VODs here, and that's not potentially that's really the way of communicating that you need to have, and the need to have with organizations in order to actually be able to have a casting spot. That's pretty much the way I got that spot with Pittsburgh Knights. That and Virtual Spotting the opportunity linking me up to it, but that's big thanks for him, by the way. But yeah, it feels like we're still a bunch of disorganized people, pretty much casting whatever we can find, where we can actually come together as a group, like kind of unionize. Unionize. You kind of know what I'm going for, right? Assemble a group of casters that can actually be assigned to different casts depending on whatever's needs, and that will be for something that would be cool for the Grand League, for instance, where some of the newer organizations, for instance, the American organizations such as Pittsburgh Knights or SSG, have had streamers that, whilst they might be good, they did not make the cuts in terms of Trackmania casting. Most of the time, they would only stick to the POV of their player. They wouldn't really go through the race to actually show people what's going on. And yeah, that's actually kind of taking away the thing. And if the streamer isn't entertaining enough, it's going to be pretty much a dead stream, out of the dead in the water. So yeah, I feel like you should more emphasize on the caster, on the quality of the casts, and actually bringing it forward to people, and actually do more promotion of quality casts than actually rely on personalities on the celebrities' follower account to actually do the work for that. We have to have the orgs to do the work for this, because they have PR. They have actually PR stuff. They have PR staff in charge of the promoting stuff, marketing, social media. They should actually enable us to leverage that power to actually get a better reach, and that's something that's not difficult. And that's really something that kind of baffles me that we haven't really looked into.
I'm just gonna say, I don't actually blame Nadeo in the first place for bringing in a big profile like Sardosh to cast it, because obviously then he's gonna bring in a lot of viewers, then you have a profile casting it. But what I think Trackmania miss, and that was what I was glad when I saw Riolo doing so well, because then you know that he is the caster in Trackmania. He was voted clearly by the community as the best caster in the game. I think you should try to promote different profiles as casters, so you also have people that like the game because of they doing a good cast, but also feel somewhat connected to the person. Because you have, Scottie brought up that you want people to come back just because of the gameplay, but you have a lot of people that will also just come back to look at the cast, look at this guy. And I don't think that's a bad thing if you have a good guy doing that, so you have both a sort of thing by both worlds. And at the moment, I feel like there is not a really. It's just when it comes to casting, I tried now to cast the Game of Duo Cup, and then first I was asked, "Wow, someone else is casting that." So it's more like who is the first to ask, and that person gets the slot instead of there actually being like Geek says that maybe there is casters come together, so it's easier to do it. At the moment, if you want to cast, you need to stay on your toes and be the first one to ask. If not, you're too late. So I blame organizers there, because just because someone is first, you should just not say yes to them. You in the end want the best caster to do it. So and like Scottie also brings up, I don't think anybody should just come in to cast the grand final. That just feels a little bit wrong.
Yeah, it feels off. Definitely feels off.
Unless it's me doing it, of course. I will always be down to cast a grand final.
Now, I'm gonna speak on a bit of a personal, on the personal note here. I've never had the chance to actually go on stage, and I don't know if I ever will. But if I ever do have the chance, once this whole thing gets winds down,
Arena.
And
yeah, Hotels Arena.
Accor Hotel, maybe not. If I could, let's say size down to somewhat a bit more modest, quote unquote, because that's still big for Trackmania. For instance, Gamers Assembly. If next year I was proposed to actually cast at Gamers Assembly on stage, I would absolutely be down for that, even though that would actually be, on my position, I'm not actually bringing the most viewer, but I wouldn't be worried about that if I got the PR team to back it up. That's the main thing. And I'm like, okay, I'm willing to go on there, but you guys are aware that I'm not here to, don't really bring the big numbers, and you guys are gonna have to make the work. And if they are okay with that and push the stream forward, then the reach is there, and the cast quality is there, and then it's a win-win situation, because the game gets more followers on more followers and viewers on Twitch. The organizers for the events are going to be happy with the audience numbers and happy with the turnout potentially for the years coming out. And yeah, this is something that we really need to do. And yeah, that's a bit end of the personal parenthesis. But yeah, if I have the chance to actually go on stage to do some casting, I'd be down.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with you in the sense, Eirik, what you were saying earlier, latching on to the point about, how casting gets split up between different people in Trackmania. As at least in the recent months, so to speak, I've had a lot of issues with casting personally. For example, when I've been doing, when I have been offered casts in some cases, I've only been offered casts of, shall we say, a group stage or early playoff stage, whereas someone else would come in and do a grand final, for example, because they had a higher viewer count, which is something which, I mean, I feel bad about being offered. I mean, when I look at that and I get offered that, it makes you feel like you're not worthy of such an opportunity or something like that, or they don't believe you're worth bestowing their kind of marquee event on, so to speak, which also in another side of things comes with the whole first come first serve thing as well, in terms of this, in the sense that, exactly as you said there, it also seems to be with just the sheer amount of cups which are happening, at the same time, it is very difficult to keep track of. But I mean, I'm seeing people casting and hosting cups that I've not even heard of, and I've made it very clear through my social media that all people need to do, if they're going to have me casting things, make me aware of your cup. If I have no idea your cup exists, I'm not going to be able to approach you to cast it. I mean, I'm one of the players who I'd like to think I know a lot about the Trackmania scene. I keep track of a lot of tournaments. I keep track of a lot of players. I know who's coming up and down through the scene, and still I'll see people that I'll see these casts and these tournaments coming up, and I'm like, I have no idea what's happening. I've not got the opportunity to reach out to them and cast that, and by the time I have, they've someone's already got there first, for example. It doesn't matter if it's, speaking for example's sake, if it was someone who was an extremely inexperienced caster, then I'm not going to get that opportunity because I wasn't there first. It wouldn't matter if I was the best caster in the world. I wouldn't get that opportunity unless I had 1,000 viewers, obviously, as the meaning goes through here. But I think the approach needs to change to latch on to my earlier point about how tournament organizers approach casters. I think one of the priorities is when I was helping manage the TMO tournament, and also I helped manage the Zero Hero casting side of things. I was then reaching out to other casters, like, we need a caster, can you do it, can you do it, can you do it? Same thing with TMO. We set up and made it very clear throughout our entire reach, so to speak, that if you want to cast or you want to POV any events, here's where you do it. And then we'll look at whoever has casted, and whoever deserves it the most, they'll get the good events, they'll get the good finals. Like, we were giving it to who had streamed the most, or who had put the most effort into streams, and that ended up with a little bit of choices that were unexpected going into TMO, and the people found a little bit strange. I mean, back in the days when Spam was dominating the casting world because he would just cast every grand final there was. And then people are saying, oh wait, there's a grand final that's not being casted by Spam. So I would say the approach needs to change for organisers and things like that, not only in terms of quality over quantity, but also, I do find it a little bit hard to say this, but you need to be able to prioritise who you actually want to cast your events. So say for example, as Eirik was saying there, the first kind of cast with a true dynamic, I would say, was the one with me, Kappa, and Eirik, that I was aware of, at the very least. I mean, people might have done it before, I'm not entirely aware. But if we're going to be able to cast that event, and we're going to be able to bring you the best experience, not saying that we would bring the best experience over some other duo or trio or whatever, but just for example's sake, then organisers need to at least have a little bit of kind of stomach to basically say to other people who have been there first, look, thank you very much for getting in touch with us, but we believe these other people would be a better choice because they bring this, they bring that, they've got an analyst with them, they've got, they've, like, we had a world champion fucking doing the
we have the Grand League Beta Season Champion with them, and we prefer to actually choose them.
And I say that almost hesitantly because I realise that's going to result in some very, very good casters not getting opportunities which they should have. Like, say for example, I'm kind of lucky in my sense where I've been around the top level tech scene for quite a time. I've also socialised with these people. I find it much more easier to approach them. They know me. They find they would be more comfortable in talking to me, even working with me, in the sense where, for example, I wouldn't have trouble asking Kappa about, say, would you like to get involved in this tournament? Because I've spoken to Kappa before, I've interacted with him. Whereas some other people, in the case of people like Geek, who was saying it was nervous in some cases approaching people, but also in the sense where, on the other side of things, say you're speaking to a big player, a world champion or something like that, they might just be like, I don't know who you are, or say I asked them and someone else didn't, then they would be more likely to go for me because they know me, not because I'm a better caster, not because they're going to be able to work with me better, in a sense of things. So I think it's going to lead to some hard choices for some tournament organisers if they do go down that route. It's going to be some hard choices for sure, but it's going to lead to a better product overall. It is going to lead to some people being a little bit unhappy, some people getting left out of some casting, some people not getting chances that they would deserve. But it's a question of, do we really want these casts to be as best as they can be, or are we going to go the easy way and have two play-by-play casters doing one round at a time? That's not the best solution. So there definitely needs to be an answer to that.
Okay, do you have any points on the final point of view, potentially, Eirik, before we finally close the show?
Well, if you just talk about the smaller cups, then I think it's down to the organizers to sort out who is eventually going to cast it and why they should cast it. From Zero to Hero, we came in pretty late, me, Kappa, and Scottie, so we only got to cast some matches, but at least we got to cast some winner bracket matches, so I'm happy about that. But they told that because Turbo and Cena's casted everything, they are deserved of a grand final, and I agree with that. But I just want to point out that casters in Trackmania, it sounds maybe wrong, but they should not expect that everybody that comes into the scenes know about them. that was the problem
Yeah.
I had, or not the problem I had in the start, but the problem that I saw in the start once there were so many new organizations coming into Trackmania because of Trackmania Grand League, and they still had this profile from their own organization casting it. And then I reached out personally to those orgs and asking, do you want some Trackmania casters? And they said, of course, but nobody has his up. And then I asked Trackmania casters, are you going to cast Trackmania Grand League? And they say, no, nobody has asked me. If you want to cast something, ask about it, because there are big chances to get to cast Trackmania Grand League. That's essentially how Geek got so popular now that you got the Pittsburgh spot. You are now probably the front runner for caster of the year. Scottie casting for big, and so this is a big opportunity if you want to essentially later on live from casting in Trackmania. So just because you are a Trackmania caster, and just because you're casted some big tournaments, don't expect everybody who comes into Trackmania to see, okay, I'm gonna do a lot of research and maybe I find out who is casting. Put your name out there, put some tweet out there that you're down to casting, hit them up in DMs. Just do whatever you can to promote yourself once big opportunities like this comes around. And it's not going to be long until the next one, because there's going to be new organizations coming in for Trackmania Grand League Season 2. So
True.
Be ready to hit them up in DMs. I'm certainly going to do so and see what maybe I can benefit from it, and maybe earn some money from it, so I can be longer in Trackmania for the future.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna do the same thing as well. I'm definitely on the lookout if there's gonna be any more
1v1 me,
opportunities.
who's faster in hitting people in DMs?
Yeah, well, I feel like it's gonna be a losing battle for me at this point. But yeah, Nicola actually making a good point, mentioning a caster organization covering the game, covering the Grand League. He mentioned the example of O Gaming, which is a really popular French organization that has channels for per game, that has a crew of casters for League of Legends, covering LES, not covering LEC, LPL, and stuff like that. And yes, that would be cool, but I don't really know if Nadeo would really agree with that. I don't know if they've even talked to O Gaming about the whole thing, and I don't even know if O Gaming are interested. That's something that is basically down to Nadeo and O Gaming discussing. Hey, do you want to discussing into this kind of thing? And I feel like, I know this it might be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but for me, having a hybrid of per player casts, per player POVs during the regular season is something that, and a unified cast, one in French, one in English, for the playoffs phase is for me a good compromise for compared to what we saw, for instance, in between the beta season and the inaugural season. In the inaugural season, we've had player casts, we've had a stream for instance, we had Ceramic streaming for Aurel, we had Luti casting for Papu, we had Wax and Shap casting for Carl Jr., we had myself casting for Pittsburgh at one point, we had yourself, and we had both of you two casting for Massa, and so on. And the thing is, that system was throughout the entire season, and while it did allow for some people to actually get their hand into casting, get their hands dirty, the fact of keeping the player casts and keeping organizations free to cast whatever they want during the playoffs, it's definitely not healthy, because I actually sent this into a feedback email to Nadeo actually after the Grand League was over. It's just turned into a popularity contest. For instance, Virtual, who is a great caster, by the way, I casted with him on Combine, he was awesome, but Virtual was definitely the most watched streamer, streaming the playoffs phase on stage, compared to, I think he had around 40 to 50% more views than all the other English streamers combined. That is that of Sinas on Spam, which brought in the second most amount of viewers, than myself, and then Cousin on Veloce. So yeah, I think a hybrid of these two would be a good compromise, with the full casters in the English section feeling on duty for the French cast. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder what's going to be your view on that. After that, we'll close the show, I promise.
Get an official cast for the next season of Trackmania Grand League, 100%. Then you can, actually Softy B can handpick who he wants to cast. He can handpick what roles he wants, and then Nadeo and Ubisoft can then promote that stream. And if different orgs want to promote the official stream, or if they want to promote their own POV, then you have that. But easy fix, just get an official cast for the biggest competition and the most prestigious one in Trackmania Grand League.
I would agree that there does need to be an official cast for TMGL, because having essentially what would have been the perfect storm for them would be having 16 casts of the same event. And of course in the playoffs it was a joke when you had 4 casts of the exact same the exact same screen, because it was coming from a clean feed.
In the exact same language. It just becomes a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It was too oversaturated in terms of casting for that, and it just felt like it was just too much. It was just too much want for quantity. You know, they wanted numbers. They wanted to be able to say, "Oh, this many people were watching Trackmania at the same time," whereas the quality all across the board wasn't as good as it could have been, just because the efforts weren't consolidated behind one person. I mean, look back at the Trackmania Pro League when we had packages, when we had thumbnails that were all coming from the organizer themselves, because there was a big effort behind it. Whereas you didn't have that in Trackmania Grand League. That was all behind orgs. Some will do it, some won't.
Yeah,
And
you pretty
also,
much had to DIY the whole way through the entire graphics package. That's pretty much what I've been doing.
Yeah, exactly. That was quite a big problem with that. But while I would like a official cast for the next seasons of Trackmania Grand League, one of the main problems I think with that is the approach they've taken to official casts previously. Whereas in previous occasions, when, for example, if I'll give Softy as an example through Pro League and through Pro League specifically, if I'm giving Softy as the example, in the sense where it was prioritized to people who were the more popular casters, of course not just giving anybody a chance, but casters that were more popular or more favoured, in the sense of just looking at a very minute limitation there. But then transitioning into Trackmania Grand League, I don't know who's in charge of Trackmania Grand League, and I will also put the TMPL thing with an asterisk of I did not have the internal information on that. It was more seeing that the people who got to stream Trackmania Grand League were just simply people with higher numbers more than anything else. But I digress. Going back onto the Trackmania Grand League side of things, as I was exactly saying through the beta season, the only streamers they were interested in was people who brought in a lot of numbers. And the people who they were throwing their weight behind in the playoffs were the people who had the most numbers. It wasn't the best casters. So do I really want them to take the same approach for Season 2? I don't know if I'd rather watch one of, shall we say, 5 English casts, knowing that one of them is going to be great, although it may have less viewers, than having one cast which is all right that has 1,000 viewers. You know, I'm not really sure which one of those I'd prefer. So I'd like to see them. I'd like to see them taking the kind of approach we're suggesting and taking that sort of approach and having an official cast. But something's telling me we're not going to get the best of both worlds in that case.